The stars were dying one by one, not because of war, nor because of time, but because no one cared to fix them anymore. Ethan Cole did. He was a human engineer, not a soldier, not a hero, just a man who built things that worked when everything else broke. The Galactic Union had long abandoned the old star beacons, giant machines that kept light flowing through the dark sectors of the Milky Way. The stars were dimming because the beacons were failing, and no one thought it mattered. But Ethan did. He couldn't stand the silence of dying stars, so alone he volunteered to repair them. For years he drifted between forgotten worlds and sleeping suns. He worked with his bare hands, breathing recycled air and eating cold rations, fixing lights no one else would ever see. Each beacon he restored brought light back to entire systems. Small civilizations looked up and saw dawn again. Still, no one remembered his name. No statues, no medals, just a man in an old ship, patching up the universe like an unseen guardian. The final beacon was the hardest. It floated near the edge of the galaxy, half frozen, wrapped in a cloud of cosmic dust. The radiation there would have torn any normal human apart. But Ethan had modified his suit, layer after layer, until it was less a suit and more a second skin. He worked for 72 hours straight, barely stopping to breathe. Circuits sparked. Cooling lines burst. His oxygen dropped to dangerous levels. But when he finally reconnected the last conduit, a deep hum filled the void. The beacon flared to life, brighter than any sun he had ever seen. For a long moment, Ethan just stared at it. It was beautiful, not because it was perfect, but because it worked. He whispered softly, "Another one fixed." His voice echoed through the empty cockpit. He smiled faintly, leaned back in his chair, and let himself close his eyes. As sleep took him, the light of the beacon filled the cabin, white, soft, and alive. It wasn't just illumination. It moved like water flowing through the air. Somewhere in the glow, a shape began to form. Slender, gentle, unfamiliar. He didn't see it at first. He was too tired, too far gone. But the light stayed, waiting, watching. When the beacon's glow settled, a quiet figure stood beside his chair. She wasn't human. Her skin shimmered like starlight. Her eyes carried entire galaxies. And her expression was one of deep, ancient peace. She looked at him, the man who had mended the stars, and whispered something in a language that didn't belong to any known world. Yet Ethan understood it wasn't words, it was gratitude. He slept on, unaware of the present standing beside him, unaware that for the first time in human history, the universe had decided to say thank you, and in the quiet hum of the beacon, a voice, gentle and bright, whispered again, "I am here as your reward." When Ethan opened his eyes again, he thought he was dreaming. His ship's cockpit was no longer dim and cold. It was filled with soft light, like sunlight underwater. Every surface shimmered faintly, and the silence that usually pressed around him felt warm. He blinked, tried to focus, then froze. Someone was sitting across from him. A girl, or something shaped like one, watched him quietly. She had no suit, no visible breathing gear. Her skin glowed faintly, as if made from the very starlight he had spent his life restoring. For a long moment, Ethan just stared. His heart pounded, but not from fear. More like awe. "Who are you?" he whispered. Her lips curved into the softest smile. "I am a fragment," she said, her voice echoing like a song through the metal walls. "A child of the stars you saved." Ethan frowned slightly. "A fragment?" "Yes," she replied. "Each beacon you restored rekindled a part of what was lost. Energy, memory, consciousness. I am made of that light. When you saved the last one, I awoke." He couldn't speak. All the long nights, all the loneliness, all the silent hours fixing machines in forgotten corners of space, they came rushing back. And now this being stood before him, formed from the very light he fought to protect. "So, you're saying the beacons were alive?" "In their own way," she said gently. "They were hearts of the galaxy. You repaired them when no one else cared. You gave us back our voice." Her eyes, silver with faint spirals like galaxies, softened. "You gave me life." Ethan sat there in silence. His mind wanted to ask 100 questions, but his heart only managed one. "Why are you here?" She tilted her head slightly like she was studying him. Then softly, "To thank you." He blinked. "To thank me?" "You restored balance," she said. You returned light to the forgotten places. The universe remembers kindness even when people do not. For the first time in years, Ethan laughed, a small, quiet laugh that felt strange in his throat. You're telling me the universe owes me a thank you card? Her smile widened just a little. Perhaps more than that. She reached out her hand, not touching him, just hovering near his. The air between them glimmered like static. Ethan hesitated, then slowly extended his hand too. Their fingers didn't meet. They didn't need to. The light connected them, warm and gentle. A pulse of memory passed through him. Stars reigniting, planets waking, children looking up at new dawns. He felt their gratitude, millions of voices whispering in the distance. He pulled back, stunned. His eyes were wet and he didn't even know why. The girl's voice softened. You spent your life giving light to others. The universe wanted to give something back. He looked at her, still shaken. Then what are you? She paused, then said quietly, I am your reward. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Only the beacon's hum filled the silence. Somewhere beyond the viewport, the stars Ethan had saved burned brighter than ever, as if watching over the engineer who had refused to let them die. And beside him, the girl of light waited, patient, calm, and endlessly kind, for the human who had given the galaxy hope. Time passed differently inside the little ship. Outside, stars drifted in their endless silence, and inside, a human and a being of light sat facing each other, one made of flesh, one made of starlight, trying to understand what the other meant to exist. Ethan had seen many wonders in his life. Red dwarfs blooming, supernovas fading into mist, planets turning quietly in the dark, but none of them compared to her. She didn't move like a person. She flowed, her body flickering with faint colors, silver, gold, pale blue. Sometimes she seemed almost transparent, like a thought wearing a shape. She spoke softly, as if every word was made carefully. You humans are strange, she said one day, tilting her head. Ethan smiled faintly. You're not the first to say that. You work so hard to save things that are not your own, she continued. You suffer, you grow old, and still you repair what others break. Why? He leaned back in his chair, thinking. Because if we don't, no one will. Her eyes shimmered. Is that duty? Not duty, Ethan said quietly. It's something like love. Love, she repeated, tasting the word like it was new. You love the stars? He chuckled. In a way. Maybe not the way you think. It's not about owning or claiming. It's about seeing something broken and wanting to make it right, even if no one thanks you. She was silent for a moment. Then she said softly, That is a beautiful kind of madness. Ethan laughed, surprised by her choice of words. That's humanity for you, a mix of foolishness and heart. She smiled, and for the first time the light in her form pulsed brighter, almost like a heartbeat. Later she asked questions. So many questions. What does it feel like to dream? What is rain? Why do humans sing when they are sad? Ethan answered them all, sometimes with science, sometimes with stories, and sometimes with silence, because some things couldn't be explained, only felt. When she didn't understand a word, she would tilt her head and glow softly, waiting until he found a simpler way, and each time he spoke, she seemed to grow more alive. One day, he found her standing near the viewport watching the galaxy swirl. You miss them, don't you? She asked. Who? The people who never saw what you did. Ethan was quiet. His gaze drifted to the endless horizon of stars. Maybe, he admitted. I used to think someone had to remember my name. But after a while I realized, it's not about that. What is it about then? He smiled, soft and tired. It's about making sure someone somewhere still has light to see by. The girl looked at him for a long time, as if memorizing every word. Then she whispered, Humans build light in the darkness. You fix what you cannot own. You care without reason. That is what makes you different. Ethan nodded, a small smile on his face. Now you're starting to sound human yourself. She blinked, a little surprised. Then she looked down at her hands, glowing faintly, and whispered, Maybe that's your real gift. You teach even the stars how to feel. Outside, the galaxy turned quietly. Inside, the man who saved the stars finally smiled without sadness. And the girl born of light began to understand what it truly meant to be alive. Ethan woke to the sound of silence. Not the calm kind, but the heavy, uneasy kind that made the air feel colder. He sat up quickly, scanning the control panel. The beacon outside and the one he had repaired, the last one, flickered weakly. Its pulse was uneven, like a heartbeat losing rhythm. Impossible, he muttered. I reinforced the whole system. The lights in the cabin dimmed slightly. When he turned, the girl was there, but something was wrong. Her glow was faint, almost transparent, and her eyes, once bright as galaxies, were dull and tired. Hey, he said softly, moving closer. What's happening to you? She looked at her fading hands. The beacon is weakening. My form depends on its light. When it fades, so do I. Ethan's stomach tightened. No, that can't happen. I'll fix it again. He jumped to the controls, pulling up schematics, diagnostics, and power readouts. Circuits overloaded. Energy output was dropping fast. The core was burning out. The radiation field around the sector must have shifted since his repairs. You can't go out there, she said quietly. The radiation has increased. It will tear you apart. Ethan didn't answer. He was already suiting up. Ethan. Her voice was soft but sharp, stopping him mid-motion. Why risk your life again? You've already done enough, he turned to her. Because you're still here. She looked at him, a shimmer of emotion crossing her fading face. You would do this. For me, he smiled gently. I've spent my whole life fixing things that couldn't thank me. For once something did. I'm not about to lose that. Her form flickered. You don't have to prove anything. He fastened the last latch on his helmet. It's not about proving. It's about finishing what I started. The airlock hissed open. Outside the beacon loomed. A giant star heart wrapped in metallic ribs, its light dying in slow pulses. Ethan stepped into the void. His suit's sensors screamed about radiation levels, but he ignored them. He reached the main conduit and started repairs. His hands shook, his oxygen dropping faster than it should. Every spark of his tools sent pain through his arms, but he kept working. Inside the ship, the girl of light pressed her hands to the glass, her form growing fainter by the second. Please, she whispered. You've done enough. Come back. He couldn't hear her, but somehow he felt her voice and a trembling warmth through the emptiness. He looked up once, saw her silhouette through the viewport, and smiled. Then he returned to work, his every movement slower, weaker, but determined. Finally, with one last connection sealed, the beacon flared back to life. Light flooded the void again, a wave of gold and silver that washed over the ship, over the stars, over her. The girl gasped softly as color returned to her form. Her eyes brightened again, her body solidifying like starlight reborn. But when she turned to the viewport, Ethan was no longer visible. Ethan? She whispered. No answer. The beacon shone brighter than ever, its light steady and strong. But the man who had saved it drifted in its glow, motionless. For a heartbeat, the galaxy held its breath. Then, from the comm speaker, his faint, raspy voice crackled through. Still here, just taking a break. Tears, or something like them, shimmered in her luminous eyes. She pressed her glowing hand against the glass. You foolish, brave human. And somewhere out there, tethered by a thin line and a heart full of stubbornness, Ethan Cole smiled through the pain. I told you, he whispered. I fix things. Ethan floated in silence. The job was done. The beacon pulsed strong again, its golden glow spreading through the dark like a sunrise after endless night. He could barely feel his hands. The radiation had scorched parts of his suit, and every breath was a shallow echo in his helmet. But even through the pain, he smiled faintly. It's fixed, he whispered. You're safe now. Inside the ship, the girl of light pressed her hands to the glass. She could feel his heartbeat fading, distant, fragile, and far too slow. Her voice trembled, soft but fierce. Ethan, come back. He didn't answer. His figure hung still in the glow, drifting gently in the current of the beacon's light. The girl closed her eyes. Her body began to shine brighter, brighter than it ever had before. She whispered words that weren't human, and the air inside the ship shimmered, vibrating with sound and light. When she spoke again, her voice carried both sadness and wonder. You gave me life from light. Now I give you life from mine. A pulse of energy flowed from her body, not harsh or violent, but soft, almost like a song. The light spread through the cabin, through the ship, through the tether that connected Ethan to his craft. Out in the void, he felt it, a warmth like sunlight through cold glass reaching for him. His suit's failing systems flickered back to life. His breath steadied. His eyes opened slowly, blinking against the brilliance surrounding him. What's happening?" he whispered. And then he saw her. Her image projected before him, her light wrapping around his body like a protective cocoon. "You saved the stars," she said gently. "Now let the stars save you." Inside the ship, her glow began to fade. She could feel her strength slipping. Every bit of energy she gave to him was something she would not get back. But she didn't hesitate. Not once. The light flowed until Ethan's body stopped trembling. His sensors stabilized. His heart, which had nearly stopped, beat strong again. When he finally re-entered the ship, stumbling, exhausted but alive, the first thing he saw was her, kneeling on the floor, her light dim, her shape flickering like a dying flame. "No," he breathed, rushing to her side. "You didn't—" "I did," she whispered softly. Her voice was faint but calm. "You gave your life to restore the universe. I only gave mine to restore one." He shook his head, tears forming in his eyes. "That's not how this was supposed to go. You were the reward, remember? You were supposed to live." Her eyes opened, weak but still shining with warmth. "And I did. Because of you." The ship was quiet. Only the soft hum of the beacon filled the air, steady and rhythmic like a heartbeat shared between them. Ethan took her hand, or the light that formed her hand, and held it. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said softly, "You can't fade now. Not after everything," she smiled faintly. "Energy cannot die, Ethan. It changes. I may not remain as I am, but I will not be gone." Her form flickered, a faint shimmer rising from her like stardust. "When the stars shine, you'll see me there, always." He gripped her hand tighter, his voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you," her gaze softened. "You never will. I am the light you saved." And as the last of her glow began to drift away, she leaned close, her voice just a whisper of warmth. "Thank you, human." Outside, the beacon blazed, brighter than any before it, as if the galaxy itself bowed in silence, and in that endless sea of stars, Ethan Cole sat beside the fading light that had once been his reward, realizing that sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones we're meant to carry within us forever. The ship was quiet again, too quiet. Ethan sat where she had been, staring at the faint shimmer of light that still lingered in the air, like dust catching the last breath of a sunset. He reached out slowly, but there was nothing to touch. Just warmth, the kind that lingered when a person leaves, the kind that refuses to fade. His voice cracked softly. "You said you wouldn't be gone." "I'm holding you to that." No answer came, only the low hum of the engines and the distant heartbeat of the beacon pulsing outside. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted and hollow. The controls blinked faintly, waiting for command. The stars outside burned with calm indifference. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't want to fix anything. He just wanted silence that didn't hurt. Days passed, maybe weeks, he couldn't tell anymore. He spent most of his time drifting near the beacon, half asleep, half awake, living between memory and dream. Then, one night or something like it, he noticed something strange. The beacon's rhythm had changed. Its pulse wasn't random anymore. It blinked in a pattern, short bursts, long pauses repeating steadily. He frowned, wiping tired eyes. That's not a fault code. He recognized it. It was Morse code, old human Morse code. His heart jumped. He stared at the pattern again, translating each pulse one by one. E, L, L, O. Ethan froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He leaned close to the console, whispering, "No way." The beacon pulsed again, slower this time. THAN. His breath caught. "You?" The screen flickered softly, and for just an instant, less than a heartbeat, he saw her reflection in the glass. Faint, fragile, and made entirely of light. Smiling, he didn't move, couldn't. His throat tightened as tears filled his eyes. "You're still here," he whispered. The lights blinked twice. Confirmation. Ethan laughed quietly, a sound caught somewhere between disbelief and joy. "You found a way." The lights pulsed again, forming words that weren't words, but he understood them all the same. Warmth, gratitude, Peace. She hadn't vanished. She had become part of the network itself. Her consciousness merged with the beacons, woven into the fabric of the galaxy's light. She was the light now. In the days that followed, Ethan traveled from one restored beacon to another. At every stop, the same rhythm awaited him. A flicker of light in the dark, a pulse that said, "I'm here." Sometimes she would hum through the ship's comms, a soft vibration like the memory of a song. Other times she would send him faint flashes of starlight shaped like words, short and simple messages. "You did well." "Keep going. I see you." And every time Ethan answered the same way, a small smile and a whisper into the void. "Thank you." He began to repair again, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Every beacon he touched now carried her voice, her warmth. It was like traveling through constellations made of memory. And sometimes, when the stars flickered brighter for no reason at all, he could almost hear her laughter, soft and distant. Carried by light, the universe, once cold and indifferent, now felt alive. Not because he had fixed its machines, but because he had found its heart. When he finally set a course for home, he looked once more at the beacon that had started it all. Its pulse flashed one last message, slower and clearer than ever before. "You saved the stars. Now live beneath them." Ethan smiled, tears shining in his eyes. "I will." And as his ship turned toward the deep horizon, the stars above shimmered gently, as if waving goodbye. Years passed. To the rest of the galaxy, Ethan Cole was a rumor, a ghost engineer who drifted through forgotten systems, waking the stars one by one. No one knew where he came from, or why every beacon he touched shone just a little warmer, a little gentler than the others. But Ethan knew. He never spoke of the girl of light to anyone. Some things were too sacred to explain, too beautiful to be believed. He carried her memory quietly like a soft song that never left his chest. When he finally returned to human space, his ship was worn, patched in 100 places, and carrying a glow that no one could explain. The scientists who greeted him were astonished. The energy readings from his vessel didn't match any known power source. It was as if the ship itself carried a heartbeat. "Where did you find this energy?" they asked. Ethan just smiled. "From a friend." They didn't press further. Some saw the look in his eyes and knew the story. There wasn't one for data or reports. It was something larger, something human. He retired quietly on a small moon, a peaceful place where he could still see the beacon's faint lights in the night sky. Children in the colony called him the Star Fixer, and he never corrected them. He would sit outside his cabin each evening, gaze up at the glowing lines across the dark and whisper, "Still there, aren't you?" And somewhere, far beyond the edges of human reach, the lights would flicker softly and a quiet, playful pattern only he could understand. Yes, always. One night, when his hair had turned white and his hands had grown too weak to hold a wrench, Ethan watched the sky longer than usual. The beacons shone bright, brighter than ever. He smiled, a tired but peaceful smile. "You did well," he whispered. "You kept them shining." A soft breeze swept through the colony. The stars above seemed to pulse in perfect rhythm one after another, like a heartbeat across the galaxy, and for a brief, shining moment, he heard her voice again, not from a speaker or a screen, but from the sky itself. "You taught the stars how to live." "Ethan." He closed his eyes, the sound wrapping around him like a lullaby made of light. His breathing slowed, his heart quieted, and as he drifted into the same gentle sleep that had once begun it all, the stars outside flared brighter, as if welcoming him home. The next morning, they found him sitting in his chair, peaceful, facing the horizon. No signs of struggle, just a faint shimmer in the air around him, small particles of light dancing like fireflies. When night fell, the colonists noticed something new in the sky. A single new star had appeared above their moon. They named it the Engineer's Star, and every time it blinked, the old signals whispered softly across the network. Faint, rhythmic pulses that spelled out one word in ancient Morse code, HUMAN, and so, the man who saved the stars became one himself. The light he gave to the universe never left. It simply changed shape. Because sometimes the universe doesn't reward us with riches or fame. Sometimes it rewards us with something far greater, a place in the light we help to create.